Hello everyone and welcome to today's video and interview with James Stuart to talk about a very awful situation at CEX, the video game store or technology themed store. I am going to start, of course, by saying that you may notice the same surname being repeated. We are brothers, it is not a coincidence. James is my brother, so just to verify that, and this was my idea. I was not pressured in any way into creating this video. I thought it would, when I heard about James's situation, I thought this would be something really good to talk about, and I've had quite a few of my own experiences with corrupt authorities and such, shall we say, so it is, of course, very dear to my heart actually, and something definitely worth talking about. So that is where we are. It is not a coincidence. You're not seeing things, you're not seeing double. We are actually related, just to clarify that. So, welcome, James.
Hello, he's my brother.
So, I'll start at the beginning.
Yeah, something I should add, it's not pronounced CEX, but let's pronounce it that way just to keep everything family friendly. The customers have insisted that I pronounce it wrong, as in the right way that we're not going to use. But anyway, so I worked at CEX almost 12 years, started as a sales assistant and then became a supervisor.
So, did you have any issues in the beginning, or was it plain sailing?
I mean, from day one, there's always situations you're dealing with the public. But what happened most recently that we're talking about is, on a whole different level. Well, not plain sailing, but normally situations can be resolved.
Had no complaints?
People complained, but they would always uphold, I haven't done anything wrong. Yeah, don't get me wrong, like you'll go your way to help a customer and say we can't buy their phone because it's broken, and they'll take it out on you, they'll point a complaint, but it usually gets resolved, we'd be believed.
Right, so so there were problems, but they'd always be resolved. You'd be found that you did the right thing, your colleagues did the right thing. It sounds like the CEOs or some staff are out of touch with reality.
I think the CEOs are fine. It's the senior ops, the ops, and so on. So it's above the manager, so it's sort of middle in the hierarchy, I suppose. Not to say that they're all like that, of course not. There's some really, really lovely staff. We're just talking about a few individuals who, unfortunately, I can't mention their names. I did think about doing like a rhyming thing, but no. Yeah, any organization just say that there's going to be issues, and it's how they respond that's really important.
Could you give a summary for us, please?
Well, to start off, so late February 2025, a member of public, which I'm going to refer to as intruder, forced their way into the TCR branch after closing. There were two sales assistants present and myself, and I was cashing up at the time, but until I later saw the CCTV, I didn't know exactly everything that happened. So this year isn't just about the situation, it's also about how CEX dealt with it.
There's an intruder, you do not know their intent. They could have weaponry, but they could be violent without any weaponry. So, yeah.
I'm glad you mentioned that, because the sad reality is they could have had a knife. There could have been other people ready to run into the store. The reality is almost every day that's a potential. Literally, people will run into store, grab a phone off you and run. And even a gang of people, it's scary. So for somebody to force their way in after closing, you're going to be on edge.
Oh, definitely. I would be very much on edge as well. Do not put your foot in a door. If someone says, no, you do not enter, obviously you do not enter, whether it is someone's private home, hospital, game shop, cinema. It's private property. You do not have an unlimited right to be there. You are invited there, whether as part of a business or a private home. So, the onus is definitely on him to explain how he thinks it is justified to force his way in, and clearly it could never be justified unless building was on fire and no one else was aware, then yeah, that's an exception. But clearly the building was not on fire.
So just to mention that we didn't have to open the door to the intruder, but it's after closing. But if it was a simple thing we can deal with, often people have a query. But yeah, they put their foot in the door and forced their way in. So I was cashing out. The other two staff were trying to deal with them, and it came to the point, because they wouldn't leave, that they had to use force, which is what CEX's big problem is. But they also had a problem with me for my lack of de-escalating the issue.
There's a lot to unpack there.
Yeah, I know. I've got loads of notes.
Because you'd be forgiven for wanting to call the police, for instance.
Yeah, well, we'll talk about the police later.
Yeah, I've actually lived with people where I can think of one person in particular who's very, unfortunately, it has to be objectively described as unhinged. I remember well the more calmly you spoke to him, the more infuriated he became, because he wanted to start a fight. So there are people like that who cannot be reasoned with calmness. I mean, the opposite of calmness, yeah, that antagonises things further, but there's no magic cure. I mean, if CEX think that they know a magical way of calming everyone in every situation, then that's a terrible simplification of psychology. I think, I mean, this is something that has evaded psychologists for decades, I'm sure, or more than decades. Being calm helps a lot. It helps to avoid adding more fuel to the fire, but it does not guarantee the person will not kick off. And yeah, well, the best you can do is try to contain the situation. In some situations, sometimes de-escalating just cannot happen. If someone is in a fit of fury, if they're on drugs, intoxicated, there is no, yeah, I mean, ultimately they have to be isolated, which again is where the police should come in. But yeah, it's a difficult situation.
Oh, I'm glad you said that, because yeah, that's really interesting. And what CX doesn't seem to see is some people you can't de-escalate. You've got to remember, and no offense to anyone, we've got people with mental issues, people on drugs, people drunk coming into the store, and you literally can't de-escalate them. You have to call the police. Or the street wardens, which again I'll get to shortly. But according to CX, I should have been able to de-escalate the issue.
I would love to know CX's method, how they think that you should have been able to de-escalate. I mean, that's the thing, the onus is on them.
I have no idea.
How would you have de-escalated? What would you have done? What would you have done? Let's say somebody forced their way into a building, so already you'd be forgiven for thinking that they have questionable intent. So naturally you respond. You don't say, have a cup of tea and thank you for breaking into our building. What is CEX up to?
Because I was trained, and I'll get to the training later. I was trained, but I wasn't, which was something else we'll get to later.
So, if I may ask, what happened next then?
Yeah, I mean, I can't go into too much detail, but they did try to use force. You've got to remember, this was, in my opinion, an aggressive customer, and perhaps the staff didn't react in the best way. But in the heat of the moment, somebody who has forced their way into the store, they will not leave. They will not tell us what they want. They're a threat.
Yeah, if you are told to leave, you leave. If you have honest intent and are not looking to cause trouble, it is as simple as that. Why, clearly they were fixated on not leaving and essentially causing trouble directly or indirectly.
I think it is. They were on public. Sorry, in a public place. And my understanding is it's a civil offence, so technically the police don't have to get involved. That's my understanding.
Yeah, that is a difficult territory. Civil matter versus criminal. I think if it breaches, if it is a breach of the peace, or is that still civil? Does police get involved then? I don't know. But yeah, it does seem very much, perhaps without getting too political, very much down to the whim of the officer or the police force even. So sometimes this is a place where police can intervene, and sometimes no. Like in your experience, it's no, you should be removing them. But that causes so many problems and endangers the staff. And obviously, police can be endangered as well. But in terms of they exist in there, their whole purpose is to try and either de-escalate or take people away if de-escalation is not an option. So yeah, that CEX are defending an intruder. That is disgusting, and penalising the people who are trying to protect the colleagues and members of the public as well. That is disgusting.
Well, to take away, I'm guessing, their responsibility as the people higher up. The responsibility is on the sales system, which is wrong. Because let's look at the bigger issue. Why does CX not have security?
Yeah, that's it. They're just looking out for their own careers, and yeah, scapegoating is the word I was trying to think of. Scapegoating everyone else, the employees, and this is all your responsibility. But it sounds like CX do not even have any real guidelines for what's to do in such situations. No real, and they can correct me if I'm wrong, but no real. Well, clearly they are not listening to employees because there's a whole security guard thing. They do not wish to harm their profits, I guess. So there's no security guard, even though, I mean, being in London, because this was a London branch, wasn't it? There are going to be thefts, and as I say, there are thefts in Birmingham branches, but in London especially, there will be probably that much higher percentage of thefts per day, week, month, whatever, per year. So yeah, I completely get the need for a security guard without a doubt.
And last year we asked HR for a guard. They said no, there's no need for one. And the thing is, there's so many thefts over the 12 years. It's got worse and worse. And CX's response is to change our training. So we're still responsible. Yet a guard, if nothing else, would act as a deterrent. Yes, they can't handle every single situation, but I don't want staff stressed that something could be robbed from them. They could be attacked. A guard at least on the door would help so much.
Yeah, that sounds so neglectful. So you ask for a guard, and they said no. And presumably after this incident, the answer is still no, even though a security guard, may have felt that they had the sort of the legal and even moral authority to send them away. Whereas as more standard employees, it's a bit of a grey area. Will the police back you up or not back you up? And as we've seen in this example, if you do the right thing, you get penalised. You end up losing your job or being disciplined. And CEX are still failing to provide a solution of what should have happened instead. Yeah, absolutely. I know some Poundland stores have security guards, not all of them, but some do, where they can have a lot of thefts. And I would imagine I do not have access to the statistics, so this is just observationary, but the two Poundland stores that I can think of, and obviously this is a different business, but Poundland stores, I suspect that they do have less thefts just by having that security guard usually stationed at the entrance, whereas the Northfield store never has a security guard. They have security guards within a shopping mall where the store is stationed, but the theft still happens. I've witnessed them myself, people running off with bags of coffee or something or other, and overhearing staff talking about the latest theft incident. So it seems to be, very much can be a deterrent, it would seem. Again, I do not have access to the statistics, but would not be surprised if stores that employ a security guard do see less theft. So hope would be the whole point of having a security guard is to try and prevent thefts and maybe occasionally violence.
Yeah, I think they're going to change the law because, as I say, if the police don't want to come down, then they need to put things in place better that staff can take action. It was always my understanding that you could use force on someone because we was told by the police many times over 12 years. Why have you called us up? You can remove them from the store. I've even been told by police in the store, why did you call us out? You just remove them themselves. But CX maintain that unless I have that in writing, I can't take on that in action. I can't actually remove someone. So if you don't have it in writing from the police, then it doesn't count according to CX.
Wow, that's really bad. So yeah, it's you're in a stuck situation, as you say. There's no security. CX refused to employ a security. She cannot go to security, and the manager was not around. And the police say, well, sorry, it is not an issue for us. This is a civil matter. Why are you wasting our time? So you cannot go to police. They cannot go to security if they do not exist. And as you say, those wardens are not going to be immediately available necessarily. They take time to arrive. So you're left to deal with it by yourself. Yeah, employees without any backup. That's, as you say, it was not your responsibility to de-escalate. You're not being trained how to. And even when for when people have been trained to de-escalate, there's no magical silver bullet. Some people might take hours to calm down or whatever. That's an impossible situation. Yeah, I've seen a lot of thefts in Poundland.
Well, their stores are being sold off for £1, which is funny. But just sorry to interrupt. Poundland and that they have things for £1, £5. CX we're talking about hundreds of £1,000s just for one item.
The Northfield branch, especially security in some stores, but not in all. And like you say, CX, they have more valuable items often. I mean, I've seen in my most local CX, whatever, PS5 stacked on top of each other. And what are they? 100 odd, more than £200, whatever they are, second hand at CX. So you've got a few, maybe £500 just there next to PS4s. PS2s, slimline PS2s have gone up in price at CX. It's or in general, because I'm sure I saw one or two for £100 there. So just looking at PS2s, you have a couple of £100, switches, switch consoles, PC handhelds like the Legion Go, the ROG Ally. So yeah, those cabinets, someone could, it would not take much for an organised gang or even just a couple of people, a couple of opportunists to break a window and make off with quite a lot and probably never be tracked down.
Yeah, don't get me started on the cabinets. That's a whole different video. But yeah, it is a very real reality. Sadly, people are desperate for money. They will run in, snatch items, sell it on.
So, if I may ask, what's the training entail precisely?
Oh, so the training consists of you read this, okay? Do you understand it? I'll mark you off. The training manager might come and test you, but until you put the training into place, I've trained lots of stuff and I always tell them, I'm going to tell you this, but until you actually start labeling stuff, buying stuff in, you're not going to remember the stuff. So obviously one of the things they held me accountable for was not de-escalating the issue, and that's why they put my job on the line. But I pointed out during the appeal of the disciplinary that they didn't train me on management de-escalation. And obviously they reacted badly to that, but I said that's not my responsibility. You're the employer.
I have to say that they sound very immature, reacting badly. It shows they are not focused on any noble cause. They're just, very much protecting their own careers, dare I say. Responsibility shirking, saying that the responsibility is someone else's, always conveniently, never theirs. But even if that is true, even if that were true, it was still, you can never fully, how should I put it, avoid responsibility, because as we're pointing out now, the responsibility is on them to train people properly, and that's in question. As you have very clearly expressed, the training was not adequate. As you say, they did not train you on de-escalation, and you pointed that out to them. yeah, that's so it still comes back to them anyway, even if you can say so and so is responsible for such and such, and obviously in a company you all have shared responsibilities, but management, that is what management is about, managing people. The clue is in the title, so it is still, one would have to question, well, what was the training, what does it entail, how are they managing people? And from what I've heard, it sounds like they're doing a very, very poor job, at least with this particular branch and management. Obviously I cannot speak for the other branches, but that's appalling, yeah, but sadly unsurprising. Sadly, it's a typical cover up and responsibility shirking. So, what did they do, can I ask?
Yeah, we're going to go a bit back and forwards, but that's fine. They reduced my written warning to a verbal warning, but that's the only thing they would acknowledge. They didn't train me, but they threw away all my other appeal claims. They're right, I'm wrong. Um, so, for example, I pointed out that they never told me I could appeal the disciplinary. So on the ACUS website, which sets like the bare minimum if it would go to tribunal, which obviously I'm not going to do, as I didn't lose my job unlike one of the other staff, it says that the employer should offer that you can appeal. And they should, come on. It's like, don't just say, oh, this is the outcome. That's the end of it.
Yeah, that's a very good point. If it went to tribunal, you can point out CEX are not following the ACAS guidelines. And I'm sure this is going on at other branches as well all the time, obviously with other companies as well. It's these systems are good, but I think they lack bite. I think we really need them to investigate more. I feel they need more investigatory powers. Okay, so they dropped that claim, yeah, after you challenged it. Yeah, you have the right to appeal. You have the right to add to the legal record, historical record, because otherwise people could just make things up left, right, and centre, and that would be the end of it. And again, I can relate to this with my own experiences with my local authority, Birmingham City Council, when I reported a corrupt landlord to them, and unsurprisingly, they sided the corrupt landlord. They never spoke to me once. As phone records and email records prove that these, who I have to describe as corrupt inspectors, said, oh, the landlord denies everything, that's the end of it. That's not how a decent investigation works. That's a very definition of corruption, very definition. So I can relate to that, definitely. I can confirm it definitely does happen. And I know other people have their own experiences. It happens a lot. That's not how justice works. I mean, for a start, when someone is guilty, usually the first thing they do is deny guilt. So obviously they're going to say it never happened. And in this case, obviously CEX are going to say, oh, it was our underlings, our junior staff, or however they see them. It's not us. You have the right to appeal against that, or to say, well, actually, let me correct the record as you did. You said that, well, you never even changed. You relayed how you told them that you were not trained in de-escalation. So if you had no rights to communicate and discuss, that would have gone unchallenged. And as we can prove, because as you say now, CEX themselves admitted they did not train you in de-escalation, but they were willing to push that through and pretend that it was the truth, hoping it would go unchallenged. So that is disgusting, and yeah, I mean, in my view, that's corrupt.
You got to remember that at no point was I paid to be a manager, but they held me responsible as a manager. And I wasn't trained as a manager either. Management responsibilities as a supervisor, yes.
Yeah, I mean, obviously it is not about the money, but there might be legal arguments there that if they are giving you the responsibilities of a manager, they should have been paying you the salary of a manager. I think there might be a lawyer who might try to argue that, because the boundaries have to be very clear between volunteer and paid employee with one title, paid employee with another title, and so forth. So I think there have been some court cases where people have, or also in terms of self-employment versus employment, someone was deemed to actually be employed legally, and thus they were owed a massive amount of back pay. That might be something else to tell CEX. If you're going to treat me as a manager, then where's my salary? And again, the money's not the main thing, but from CEX's side, it probably is. So it might remind them that their shoddy practices do not even serve their self-centered interests.
Yeah, I hadn't even thought of that. But the difference really between the manager and the supervisor, apart from the experience, is that they are paid to have the ultimate responsibility. Because it wasn't just the three of us staff that got into trouble. There was a chain, which I can't go into detail. But at the end of the day, CX did not want this to go public, the intruder to complain, and they are covering themselves and shifting the responsibility to the sales assistant and supervisors.
So what was your official title then after you started as a sales assistant? What was then your next title?
They changed it to team leader, which doesn't mean anything. Oh, yeah, you remind me. So the pay, it was above, I think, national living wage, which they would always make out, oh, you're getting paid so much money, when you could just do a quick search and see that other retailers were paying more. But obviously I did it because I enjoyed working with the other staff, working with technology, getting to that undo, the most recent iPhone, for example, or maybe not iPhone, Android phone, but whatever. So there were a lot of good to it, and there were some very nice customers too.
So can I ask if you are comfortable saying how has all of this awful situation affected you?
I mean, I've been really stressed, not being able to sleep, and obviously CX maintained that being suspended for over 3 weeks is reasonable, and they just send an email saying, "Oh, you can call this phone number." I'm sorry, that's not enough. Like, update me a bit more or something. And that's why I ultimately left, because of the way they handled it. I appreciate it's a difficult investigation, but I think it's straightforward. Somebody forced their way in, and no action has been taken against that member of public. Instead, the staff have suffered, and they haven't considered the mental health other than just sending a set email about, you can call this phone number. So yeah, it's been extremely stressful.
That is negligence, not on your parts, but on the management's part. I mean, it sounds like the antagonist could be money motivated, and CX as well. It sounds like it's all about the money. Just, yeah, no care for mental health of staff, physical health of staff, same for the members of the public. But instead it's, well, how can we best avoid a lawsuit or whatever? Oh, let's throw our own employees under the bridge. That does not give me confidence to ever consider working at CX. And other stores may well have a different attitude, but yeah, that's definitely a very, very worrying practice, to say the least.
Oh, it's definitely money, 100%. All the intruder had to say was, "I need to do X," and be like, "Okay, we'll do it tomorrow," or whatever. Not like, it's just crazy.
Again, it's also it's also damning toward CX, and yet somehow they managed to spin it on the head because, as you've said, they were telling you before you corrected them, they were telling you that you were trained in how to de-escalate, and you correctly corrected them on that point. You pointed out that you had not been. But the point is, they never once said, correct me if I'm wrong, they never once said that this person was not even looking to cause trouble, because the fact that they say you need to de-escalate, obviously for the average consumer, potential consumer, shopper, a visitor to the store, shall we say, you do not de-escalate. If somebody walks into CX and starts browsing a game store, the Switch games, for instance, you do not tap them on the shoulder and say, right, we need to de-escalate this. This has got out of control. So the fact that they tell you that you should have been de-escalating proves that they believe he was an antagonist. Completely, right? That stands to reason. Otherwise, no one would be talking about de-escalating. So it seems simultaneously they want this person to be both victim and antagonist. They want them to be an antagonist so they can shift the blame to you and your colleagues, but they also want them to be a victim so the higher ups can claim we did everything properly. It's like a paradoxical nature, they're trying to put two narratives together which simply do not fly, which again I've experienced myself with corrupt authorities. They often string two stories together, hoping no one will challenge them. Well, if we are talking about de-escalation, then one has to ask once again, why would de-escalation be needed? What was he doing? Oh yes, he was trying to break in, because that is breaking in. That's by definition breaking in. You no longer have a right to enter that premises. You've been told you need to leave. That's by a representative of the company. So that's the definition of intruding. This person is an intruder trying to destroy the CEX business in some way, whether just by shouting, harassing staff or stealing, whatever. We do not know his motives, and they're being held as some kind of victim. How are they a victim? And as you say, maybe one or two colleagues use too much force. So obviously that's something that needs to be addressed. But in terms of whether or not he had the rights to be there, clearly he did not. And it is not easy to de-escalate. And as I say, sometimes the more calmly you speak, the more infuriated people get. There's a certain personality type or types where that happens when people are in a certain state. As I've witnessed myself, I think they almost feel intimidated by your calmness because they want to start a fight. They get insulted and they keep trying to purposely misinterpret your words, hoping you will get angry, and then they will feel justified in getting even angrier. So there are things that definitely worsen things, of course, but there is no silver bullet for de-escalation. It depends very much on the person and where you are. We do not know his motives. He put his foot in the door and said, I am going to enter even though you are denying me access. That's not how civilized and decent people behave. That's the sign of an antagonist, so you have to respond. That is very much the sign of an antagonist, and so you have to respond accordingly, and clearly everyone did. Again, maybe mistakes were made by the one or two people detaining, but it's the question over whether or not he should have been removed. Surely there can be no question. He's an intruder. He's clearly not using his own feet to walk, so he needs to be somehow, ideally with help from the police, but as you say, they have been useless in this case, escorted away from the premises. So, I mean, surely that pretty much comes under breaking and entering, just because it was maybe broad daylight or whatever, or not broad daylight, but, perhaps not quite midnight, but in a publicly well-lit place maybe, but still, thieves can operate during the day. They definitely do operate during the day. So that just gives people a license to feel encouraged to emulate that example. CEX is sending out the wrong message, most definitely.
And if you're told by all staff to leave because this is not getting anywhere, you leave. Yeah, the problem is if you're ticked off on their training, then you're responsible, even though it may not have been refreshed in a year, 2 years, 3 years, so on. Oh, that's what I was going to say. Sorry, I keep forgetting things. So the problem with these people who do the investigation, disciplinary, is they make judgments on people they don't know. And I guess that's a lot of the case in the court as well. But when you've known someone for 10 years, for example, you can vouch for them. So I know the staff that I worked with and people know me. And then to make such a decisions like they did seems like they didn't consider the person's character and past behaviour.
Yeah, 10 years, a decade, that is some time. And as you say, you got to know these people. So I imagine you know how they respond in various situations. And as you say, the management, they did not consider that. And that's another thing, I'm glad you brought that up. So often happens within companies, local authorities, governments, when someone's disciplined or investigated, whatever. It's never how have you been up until this point or whatever, which is not to say that past good behavior, for example, excuses present behavior, that contrast, but there's that as you say, that superficial summary, I think perhaps I could call it, where you are treated as though you've always been behaving that way, whether it's an innocent mistake or you've been stitched up, you've done nothing wrong. It's always it's always very black and white, I suppose, is what I'm saying. They make everything black and white. It's companies and organisations, when they get to a certain size, they hate colour, they hate having to do hard work and actually investigate. It's all black and white. This person is an antagonist, corrupt, a thief, whatever, and will act as though they've always been like this, instead of, well, okay, perhaps this customer, for example, in this hypothetical situation, is making things up to get compensation. Did we ever consider that? Let's look at this employee's past track record. It's about being open-minded. I suppose that is my point as well, being open-minded. Because, as you say, you've worked with these people, you know them better than management, I'm sure. So your words should have influence, and somebody could say, well, you could be biased, but then the whole point is CEX management are being biased. Clearly they, from high above, have decided, well, so-and-so is reacting in such a way, but have we considered anything else? Was this the first situation of this kind that they've come across, or were they previous where they behaved differently? What is the background to the story? Because every story has a background. No day appears out of nowhere. A day follows the previous day, and so forth. So that is a really good point. Yeah.
I think it was 10 years, or so. It was a lot of years, maybe not 10 years, but it was definitely a lot of years.
What do you feel would be ideal in these situations, which would help?
Reported the intruder to police.
Yeah, definitely. Especially, CX stores are targeted. As I think I might have said on a video once, but I was in my local Northfield CX store and I saw a theft myself. I've not seen one for a little while, although I do not go there that much at the moment these days. But a year or two ago, I was browsing the PlayStation 2 games, which are sort of facing a cabinet at the other far side. And so the entrance is to the right of both. So I just heard a commercial. I was picking up a PlayStation 2 game, looking at the prices, looking at the game, seeing if they had any rare games or any games I needed to add to my collection. And I suddenly heard a commotion, and somebody, I don't think I even saw an intruder because they were that fast. I just saw someone who I recognised as a member of staff sort of slip in. So I think he had tried to grab the phone or whatever was being stolen, or the purse, I'm not sure which. It all happened so fast. And I'm pretty sure in that case, the police were called. I'm not sure if they came to the store. I think I'd left by then, but maybe I saw a police car on the high street later on. But I'm pretty sure this man, who maybe was the local manager or team leader, something to that effect, he seems to be somewhat senior. I think he led his colleagues essentially. I think he was on the phone to the police, and I suppose because property had been stolen, then it's a criminal offence. And that's again the message CEX is sending out, that if nothing is stolen, it's quicker to blame the employees. And if something is stolen, the employees will still be blamed, of course. Why did you not have a titanium safe wall? Because why did you let someone in when you were cashing up or just finishing cashing up? They would be jumping through hoops to blame everyone but themselves, instead of saying, well, why when we were asked, or we feel we should ourselves consider having security guards, why do we keep saying no? So no, management have to blame themselves and take some responsibility. It really sounds like they need to grow up. That's really immature.
Yeah, if money had been stolen by this guy, I would have been sacked probably. Why didn't you lock the door? Blah, blah, blah. Yeah, so they hold me for gross misconduct because I didn't de-escalate the issue, and I didn't inform the manager what had happened, even though one of the other staff had. Apparently, I still had to tell the manager, even though I spoke to them the next day. If the incident had been like something had been stolen and stuff had been attacked, of course I would have called the manager. But I'm sorry, that's clutching at straws.
I find myself seriously wondering, do these CX management folk actually understand the meaning of gross misconduct and negligence? Do they actually understand what that means? I'm pretty sure they need a dictionary, or need to realise they're describing their own behaviour. That's gross misconduct by management, without a doubt. And as you say, behaving so immaturely, shouting, that's not how you should be behaving. That's not good management. That's quite scary to think that they're in that position, but unsurprising, sadly. It's hardly unsurprising.
And you know what's great about using it, that is they could have sacked me without paying leave. The moment they say gross misconduct, that gross, that means they can just sack me without any additional pay.
Yeah, that's really bad, really bad. Yeah. So by calling it gross misconduct, they could sack without paying leave. Yeah.
Yeah,
But in the difficult situation, you clearly did the best that you could.
thank you. That's well said. Oh, yeah, you mentioned about the guards. So one of the staff lost their job over this. One of the others got a final written warning, and I got the written warning, which I then managed to downgrade to a verbal warning. So because they did admit they hadn't trained me properly, but they maintained they still did everything else right. So the incident happened in late February. And two of the staff were suspended, I think, 2 months later. And then I was suspended another week later, a week before I was due to go on my Easter holiday, which is very bad timing because you know how important Easter is to me.
Yeah, that is so upsetting and completely wrong. As you say, the Easter holidays are important to you. You should have been enjoying yourself, taking a break, and obviously, yeah, you were unable to focus on what's important to you, and having done nothing wrong, just trying to, despite what CEX say, trying to de-escalate the situation because someone breaking in. Again, we should not have to explain this to people, but someone breaking in, regardless of where they're breaking into, should be held accountable, should be challenged, and disappointed in the police not wanting to get involved. And I'm disappointed in CEX. And they could have been there to steal money, and steal money, steal games, destroy equipment. Who knows?
Yeah, I wonder how they would have reacted. Would they finally have got some security? No, because staff have been attacked before by members of the public. I don't know if I mentioned, I might repeat myself a few times, but there were other customers in the store who they even told the intruder to leave. So I don't think we was being unreasonable.
Yeah, I'm really glad you mentioned that. So that the fact that other customers told this antagonist intruder to leave again shows that it was not just the employees, even though clearly that those responses were accurate. But it's both employees, members of the public. It's everybody's sound of mind there can see. Hang on, this is not rational behaviour. This is not how decent people behave. If you're trying to break into a place that's closing or has closed, you need to leave. So members of the public were chorusing what the employees are saying. That's very important, and I think is another clear indication of how off track CEX management is, sadly.
Yeah, I need to just explain the overall process. So, as I say, two of the staff were suspended, then I was suspended. Then we had an investigation. This was all online, not in person, which obviously this is fine what we're doing right now, but imagine your job is at stake. Doing an online meetings is horrible. Anyway, so we had the investigation, then we had the disciplinary, and then which caused one of the staff to get sacked, and then us other two returned to work, and I and the one who got sacked appealed, but they weren't reinstated. I got the verbal warning, so the written warning. But yeah, I came back to work and I said, I handed in my resignation. Almost, yeah, in November, it would have been 12 years, yeah.
And so you spoke to the manager online.
Oh no, I didn't speak to Mandra online, but I'm glad you mentioned that. So during the investigation, um, uh, yeah, they tried to turn the tables on me. They said, "How would you feel in the customer's shoes?" A customer who I call intruder because they didn't buy anything or sell anything. Uh, and I said, "But they forced their way in. They were in the wrong." So while I'm not saying that the staff should have used force, you can't say what would you do in their situation because I would have been in the wrong. So you see the point? This is an ops, somebody who's above me.
That is appalling management and actually dangerous. That's disgraceful. Clearly they're the ones being neglectful.
You know what the stupid thing we did was we tried to help them. Because if we just left the door locked and said, come back tomorrow, they would have put in a complaint maybe and would just be like, it's after closing. Yes, and misconduct, exactly. Yeah. So that's why I was really worrying that, do I know I'd lose my job, but that's it.
Yeah, of course, absolutely. You'd be wondering, yeah, that's extremely anxiety inducing, extremely uncertain, especially when you've just done the right thing, and the next thing you're wondering, is this the end of the job? Yeah, is this the end of pay, no leave? Yeah, that's really, and as you say, it sounds like I've so often kept you in the dark during the process. Yeah, that is the sad thing. You try to help them. It's a sad story. Trying to do the right thing, doing the right thing, and being penalised for it. Trying to help someone, and instead it's an impossible situation from CEX's view. In that they feel, as you say, if you'd let them in, then obviously it's, if something had been stolen, it's why did you let them in, or if nothing had been stolen, they might question. But if you try to send them away or try to help them, it's still a lose-lose situation. Yeah. Once again, that is terribly disgusting. Asking you to put your this is baffling and insulting. So they want you to put yourself in the shoes of an intruder. Is this official CEX company management policy? You try to turn away an intruder, and they want you to put yourself in the shoes of the intruder. This is one of the most absurd things I've heard in a long while, and I've heard many, many absurd things from managers and all sorts. But so they want you to. I cannot even process that. That's so essentially they are asking you how you would feel if you broke into a building. That's what I mean. That's so basically CEX is victim blaming and trying to exonerate a potential thug, a potential thief, somebody with unknown motives, somebody who clearly is trying. They've been told politely, we're closing, sorry, come back another day, and their solution is no, I'm going to force my way in. And CEX management say, well, let's turn that around. Imagine if you were a thief. Imagine if you were a thief. I mean, where does one begin with that? Well, I could write a whole book about that. What kind of a...
Oh, I'm thinking about doing a whole series telling you what goes on behind the scenes.
Yeah, that would be good. A whole series would definitely be good. Sorry to sound as though I'm talking about everybody else at CEX losing their jobs, but that kind of behaviour should get CEX shut down overnight. At least the management should be shifted. Those people who are managers, they cannot stay in those jobs. And I realise it's difficult to mention them, but that is disgraceful and disgusting. So I just cannot stop going over that. So someone breaks in, essentially, or they bypass staff, they ignore warnings on staff, they are therefore an intruder. They've had the consent to enter has been withdrawn or was never there to begin with because it's closing time. They've been told to come back. They've decided to push their way in. Obviously, they have no legitimate reason for being there. For a start, someone can reason that, and I'm sure this person could reason that staff are not going to serve him because he's come in beyond closing time. They're not going to, I would imagine, shrug their shoulders and say, "Oh well, he's pushed in now. Let's serve him." So, why would they need to be there, other than to cause trouble? They have no legitimate purpose. They're proven by breaking in. Essentially, that is the definition of breaking in. They have no legitimate legal nor moral reason to be there. And CEX in response say, the CEX management in question say, imagine if you were an intruder. Yes, imagine if we were an intruder and so my local store in Northfield, So imagine if Northfield was closed. I think it closes around 7, 8 p.m. or something. Imagine if they were just closing up. I could see there's a light on the inside, or they were already closed. And I said, hey, I knocked on the door and said, hi, can you let me in, please? And they said, no, we're closed. And then I pushed the door somehow and said, okay, I'm actually going to start browsing. I would hope that they'd say, no, actually, you're not going to start browsing. We've told you once, and we're telling you one more time, you are not going to enter. That is what CEX should have said. That I cannot. I've heard some ridiculous things in my time, but the idea that you should put yourself in the shoes of an intruder, that actually leaves me speechless. I'm running out of things to say. That is terrible.
I'll just go back a bit, sorry. So there was an investigation, then there was a disciplinary, even though I hadn't even touched the intruder. So during the disciplinary, which was held by an ops, they claimed I locked them, the intruder, in the store. The store has a bolt so anyone can access from inside. So I did the bolt so no one else would come in and steal money or anything. But if I had left the door open, I would also have got into trouble. And when I was showing the CCTV, which the ops didn't show me during the disciplinary, they did show me during the investigation, but you should still show the CCTV again if you're making a claim. So they said that I locked them in, but they immediately removed the bolts and unlocked themselves. So they were never locked in a store, which I pointed out, and the ops did drop that claim. However, their attitude, the way they spoke to me, raised their voice, treated me like a child, was not acceptable. And CEX has not responded to that when I mentioned that in my complaint, which they still haven't responded to.
So as you say, there was a bolt they could let themselves out at any time, and so they were not trapped. No, they were not trapped at all.
Yeah. So I put in a complaint once I had the disciplinary, which a month later CEX still haven't responded to. During the appeal, I asked the senior ops if HR could respond to my complaint. They haven't done. I emailed HR asking, can you respond to my complaint? They still haven't, which is very frustrating. Oh, so I was just can I just add? Yeah. So I mentioned ACUS. It says the ACUS site. It says that a company should respond within 5 days with a meeting to deal with a grievance. 5 days. Yeah. So no one's actually properly read my email. They just saw it. Oh, I want an appeal. And it says another thing. Hey, on ACUS website, it says the employer should offer you the right of appeal. Yet the senior ops maintains that they didn't need to offer me the right to appeal to disciplinary. No, because it's ACUS website. If it went to tribunal, they'll look at CEX and say, "Oh, you didn't follow our guidelines."
Yeah, exactly. And maybe 1 or 2 people use too much force. So obviously discuss that with them.
But yeah, if the staff had done that, and yes, perhaps they used too much force, but if they had hit the guy or something, then yes, sack them. Yeah.
Where the intruder is concerned, obviously they should have been turned away, and that's what everyone was trying to do.
He's probably got money, compensation, who knows?
Yeah, that could have been his plan all along, to get compensation. Who knows? That could have been it.
Yeah, I don't know if they actually got a compensation, but yeah, there's. Oh yeah, for I know that could have been their goal. We just don't know. Please talk to me. I'll try and deal with the situation, but don't just force your way into the store and expect to be treated like royalty.
Yes, on the official ACOS website, it says they should respond within 5 days with a meeting to deal with a grievance. So just a month. That's I think that's slightly past 5 days. That's inexcusable. And I'm sure they're not incredibly busy to the point where they cannot even email back and say, well, we're not quite sure about what our official response is yet. We'll get back in a week or 2 days, whatever. But not even that. Not even an acknowledgement is my point. They're not even acknowledging you. Just that you are constantly chasing it up and they are not acknowledging Yeah, that's really, really bad. Yeah, I had a form once the landlord was asking me to sign, and it said you have been shown where the fire exits were. And I had not been, so I refused to sign, and that ultimately resulted in me being evicted, something I'm still trying to get justice for. So I can relate to that. If I'd signed that and there had been a fire, we all know what would have happened. The company, our landlord and Birmingham City Council would have said, well, every tenant had been shown where the fire exits were. It says so. No, that's fraud. And so whatever had started a fire and put people's lives at risk and their homes, their livelihoods, would have remained unchallenged, unseen. It would have been assumed that we stumbled about and failed to find the fire exit. And the other people signed because they knew full well there was a danger of being evicted if they did not. It's a really dangerous situation. So you have that pressure. Lie and say you have been shown and risk in danger in your life and everyone else's life, or do not sign and end up being homeless by a corrupt landlord, being backed by the city council. So, I can identify that. It's even after national scandals like Grenfell, there's no change at all, no change whatsoever. It's whether it's fire, whether it's CEX and intruders, it's scapegoating, victim blaming, always with someone with some sort of authority in the sense of some sort of influence, formal influence, where they have local authorities in their pocket or someone else in their pocket. In this case, maybe it's management and their colleagues who just all of the however many people there are just clueless or incompetent, corrupt, whatever, money motivated. They all support each other essentially. So there's an impenetrable force. You do the right thing, and none of the management from this particular branch or situation will question their own behaviours. They'll just say goodbye to everyone who is the one speaking up. It's always the case.
Oh yeah, yeah. It doesn't matter. Sorry, I was just saying, it doesn't matter what they look like, age or anything. It doesn't matter. They could do absolutely anything.
Yeah, absolutely. Any age, any background, anyone. Yeah, that's the thing. Is that unknown variable. You've never seen that person before. If you have, even if you've seen them 100 times, that still wouldn't actually change anything, because that would be contrasting with previous behaviours. If they've been a paying customer before, but this time they've got their foot in the door, nothing entitles them to do that. So, but yeah, you may well have never seen this person before. You have no idea what the motives are. Obviously, you would be on guard. Yeah.
And that's why I told people what happened outside the CEX who know me for like 15 years. They're like, what? They're literally like, what?
Yeah, I can imagine they were very, very surprised.
Yeah, so I don't know if I'm supposed to report the intruder to the police because the CX hasn't done it. Again, it's a civil matter, so the police probably wouldn't do anything. And I need to add that the intruder also filmed us, so they can upload that for all we know. They also obtained CCTV from CEX, so again, they could upload that. So I mean that CCTV along with the other two staff. Censored, but still you can decensor that, upload it.
I mean, arguably that is an invasion of your privacy. So they recorded everything on a phone. As you say, that could be circulating somewhere. And obviously they'll probably do what sadly so often happens on YouTube. They cut out certain bits so it looks like they're some sort of victim, and they'll put captions on to twist the whole story. That's extremely damaging, and CEX should be having your back and saying, and again, if someone really thinks that they have an alternate idea, they should present it and say, well, okay, this is what we think you should have done, or this is what we are going to do. We're going to get security guards for you. We're going to, instead of, just creating these impossible situations which seek only to worsen a situation and imperil those who have done the best that they can in a very trying situation. Yeah, that's really, that makes me very suspicious about the management. Clearly their priorities are all over the place, and frankly they have no idea how to manage, I would say, from talking about these individuals in particular in this saga.
Yeah, I would love to know from a lawyer's point of view if they did actually have to hand over the CCTV, because it's a bit difficult reading on the government's website whether companies are legally obliged. As I said, they just didn't want us to go further.
Yeah, that is an interesting grey area. Obviously, of course, with if there's a request from a lawyer, maybe, or police, then yeah, you have to hand it over unless you have some sort of exemption. But yeah, that is an interesting one because maybe it falls under the right to know. I think companies may have to provide data that relates to you and your likeness, and maybe under a subject access request, maybe. And maybe they would also have to blur out other individuals rather than give the naked, unedited tape, of course. But yeah, that's an interesting point because I'm sure there are contradictions. Like if something would, or not contradictions, exemptions. If something would jeopardize someone's safety, then a company might have the rights to, without going to court, to say no, we are not going to share this, even though it contains your data as well, or we have to heavily edit it, or so forth.
Oh yeah. If the police ask for it, you have to, yeah. Well, let me mention about CX training. So in the sales assistant training, in these kind of situations, you tell the manager. Where was the manager? They weren't present. It was just the three of us. So they held me responsible as manager. I hadn't been trained on management de-escalation. So in that situation, you call the police or security. We don't have security. In the 12 years I worked there, the police have been unfortunately very unhelpful. Again, it's not to say all police are really bad, but they've literally told us, why are you wasting our time? Why did you not remove them by force? Well, the wardens, I called the wardens. So we have street wardens, thankfully, and they did come, but the intruder had left by then.
And not knowing how long the warden would take to arrive as well, obviously adds to uncertainty.
No, it could take a couple of minutes, could take longer for them to come. And this is what I tried to point out to CEX. I did the next best thing. The police won't come down. We don't have security. So I called the street wardens. What else do you want me to do? I didn't physically touch them.
So when did you last hear from them?
Well, apart from a set letter to say to consider my resignation, as I've said, they've not taken action considering I've told them I've left because of what's happened.
So they're basically ignoring you, yeah.
That's what comes across, yeah.
A month later, and they still have not responded. And they still have not responded to your complaint. So I really hope that they do respond. But yeah, sounds like they're dragging their feet on purpose.
And even if they don't agree with that, as I say, the one who got sacked at the very most should have got a final written warning. Because as I say, maybe they used too much force, but they should not have got sacked, or at least got reinstated after the appeal. But they just, they're going to stick to their guns, I think the expression.
Yeah. Yeah, final warning instead of just an immediate sacking, yeah.
Yeah, unfortunately, the other staff, if they don't want to take it further, I totally understand because it's extremely stressful. But then it feels like CX has won.
Yeah, that is difficult, understandably, if they're not sure about taking things forward. That is difficult. Yeah, that is really difficult. I hope maybe in some way they can get some sort of justice. But yeah, at the same time, we did not want CEX to continue with this clearly bad practice. It sends out the wrong message, very much so, and people have lost their jobs because of it. Yeah.
One person lost their job, yeah.
But as in, yes, one person lost their job, but ultimately yourself via your resignation. So that's two. But yeah, one sacked, and you, because as you say, obviously, understandably, not wishing to work with them anymore after they've treated you. You handed in your resignation. So, yeah, two casualties there.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it sounds very much like victim blaming. It really does. It's this classic victim blaming behaviour.
And that's probably why they sacked that one staff as well. Yeah, because there's no closure. This is the thing. CX made their decision, whether you agree or not, but it feels like there's no closure for me. So this is really good to talk about and make people aware. Well, thank you. This has been really helpful.
So, is there anything else that you'd like to add?
No, I think we've gone through everything, and I'm aware. I think this video has been going on for a bit, but I was just distracted by because I think my image has just changed for some reason. It's zoomed in for some reason. No idea why. So I apologise for that. My laptop's got a mind of its own.
I did actually notice that your image had become enlarged for some reason. I was not quite sure what or how that happened, but yeah, I had noticed that.
But no, again, thank you very much.
I'm really glad that it helps to talk about it, definitely, and hopefully other people will find it very interesting, and whether they're surprised or unsurprised, yeah, please let us know if you have any experience in these matters or similar situations.
Thank you.
Well, thank you, James. Thank you so much for joining. I think the viewers will really much enjoy hearing it. Thank you for sharing your story. It really is an awful situation, and hopefully this interview will help in some way. Do you have any kind of message for the viewers, maybe?
I mean, it'd be great to hear other people's views, obviously, and if they've been in similar situations. Yeah.
And yeah, if anyone else has any views to share, any similar situations, we'd love to hear them. So it sounds like they've made a real pig's breakfast of things.
That's one way of putting it.